First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to, talk about what as AWS we are doing in healthcare and life sciences domain. And for the next 20-25 minutes, I'll quickly talk about, AWS in healthcare. And then I'll talk about, how data and AI is helping organizations or how it can be leveraged to deliver outcomes. So quickly, AWS, we have been the most comprehensive and broadest cloud platform for over 18 years, 19 years now. And specifically in healthcare and life sciences practice, it's been there for almost 9 years now. And the leadership team across the healthcare team have an average of 18 plus years of experience. So what we're trying to say is that, a combination of tech and domain expertise is what is actually helping us have more domain-oriented conversations or domain-oriented solutions to organizations in this particular domain. And apart from this, there are also purpose-built services which are meant for the healthcare domain. Like, you could see some of those on the right-hand side. It could be around comprehend medical, which helps analyze the sentiment, and it also helps transcribe medical, which can actually help transcribe the, say, a patient and a doctor conversation. Similarly, AWS Healthcare, which is actually a FHIR compliant, data lake, which can, handle database structures which are more aligned to, say, what could be the attributes of a practitioner, what could be the attributes of a patient, similarly, an institution. So these are some of the purpose-built services which are also available on AWS. And we have more than 200 plus services in AWS, and many of you might be knowing, and it could include compute, database, IoT, AI/ML, analytics, dashboarding. So quite a few services. Out of those 200 plus services, more than 146 services are HIPAA eligible services, which can actually help build solutions which are more, healthcare oriented and comply to the regulations. And more than 143 global compliance requirements, which could be, HIPAA again, it could be GDPR, it could be, certifications from HITRUST or ISO, and also, India-specific requirements where it is needed. And we work with, organizations across the spectrum, starting from the point of care at hospitals to, central and state level government organizations. We also work with a lot of private hospitals. We also work with, organizations who are, startups or ISVs who are building solutions for the healthcare organizations. Similarly, we also work with a lot of non-profit organizations who are, again, delivering services for the healthcare industry. And one of the reasons why, or some of the reasons why these organizations are using AWS is, one, in terms of scalability. Right? I mean, you start with a small volume today, and over time you grow to handle large volumes. It could be, starting from a few MBs or GBs of data going into petabytes of data. And especially when we talk about genomics, the data volumes run into petabytes, right? So that is where you actually need that scalability on demand as and when you grow. Second, in terms of flexibility, when I say flexibility, it could be usage of different kind of services. It could be plain compute, it could be plain database, it could be, a different kind of, AI models that you want to develop, or you want to use readily available AI models. So there is flexibility to, run or use these operations on or services on AWS. So this is quickly about, what we are doing in the healthcare and life sciences domain as AWS. Before I move on to the AI topic, one question for the audience. Have you all heard of sustainability development goals? Okay. So which particular sustainability development goal is related to healthcare? Or probably name of that goal? Yes. So SDG 3, which is good health and well-being, is the sustainability development goal which is related to healthcare domain. And the reason I brought this up is that, as a country, there is a common purpose that all of us are working towards. All the research that we do, all the solutions that we develop, all the work that is being done is aligned with a common purpose, because we want to improve in those specific indicators which are part of SDG 3. right? And if we have to look at some of these indicators, it could be maternal mortality rate, it could be neonatal mortality rate, it could be life expectancy of birth. So these are these are not all the indicators, but these are some of the indicators that we as a country are focusing to improve on, right? Have we achieved the objective? No, not yet. But as per the latest report, we are on track to achieve these, right? If you take the example of, say, maternal mortality rate, we are at 80 now, but a long-term objective is to be at 3.4. Similarly, neonatal infant mortality rate is at around 17, and long-term objective is to be at 1, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that, if we have to achieve this, there is a lot of process improvement that we have to do, a lot of innovation that we'll have to do. And at the same time, the core lever that we all have to use is around data and AI, right? And coming to that, as per a research, only 3% of the data is actually used that we have available. So when we have 3%, that means, it is vast amount of data that we have, right? it could be data from clinical trials, it could be the genomics data, it could be the, diagnosis data, it could be the MRIs or ultrascans, or the variables data, right? There is huge amount of data which is available, but apparently as per this study, 97% of this data is going unused. And at the same time, another perspective is 32% of the organizations are actually able to help realize value out of this data, right? But what about the remaining 97% of the data, or the 68% of the organizations which are not able to realize the value of this data, right? So that is where AI comes into picture on how do we capture that data, bring it into a place, and then use AI to build some outcomes out of it or derive some insights out of it, right? So talking about AI, we don't directly do AI, right? Before we do AI, there is a data foundation that needs to be built. So unless you have the right data foundation, you may not be able to deliver the full outcomes of a AI model that you build or the AI model that you use, which is readily available. And when we talk about data foundation, we could probably categorize it into broadly 3 areas. One is it comprehensive. When I say comprehensive, it should be able to handle multimodal data. So when we say multimodal data, we have data in, say, plain text, it could be videos, it could be images, it could be, say, PDF documents, it could be actual databases with, say, tables and, columns and rows. So it should be able to handle the data which is comprehensive enough and obviously open and interoperable, right? So that is where you can actually mix these multiple data sets to build the AI that you actually want. So if you build an AI solution which actually analyzes only image data and a separate AI solution which can analyze only the text data, but there has to be a layer which will actually bring these 2 data sets together and help you federate the analysis, right? And that is where we talk about integrated kind of a data management, which can help you integrate data sets across multi-models, and at the same time, getting data from multiple data sets. Again, it could be a PACS system in a hospital, it could be a health management information system in a hospital. Similarly, there are various other applications which are available. So integrating through open adapters with these systems is something which is also needed. Third, govern. So obviously, security compliance is an important aspect, right? So how do we handle the governance layer on top of this data? How do we define who can access what data sets? Similarly, if we talk about research institute, you have a lot of data, and some of the research institutes want also to make this data available in a public domain. Do you put it as it is? No, right? You anonymize it, you subset it, and then you put it on a public domain. So how do you handle those governance layers or governance mechanisms to say that, this part of the data is to be available only to these people or in a public domain? And in AWS, we help, provide these services which could actually help you create this comprehensive multimodal data repositories or a data lake, and also different mechanisms to integrate with different EHRs or different systems using, it could be API based integration, it could be a queue based integration, it could be a file based integration, and a governance layer, which could be around security, encryption, defining guardrails on your large language models. It could be different ways of defining that. And this could be another way of looking at it. How do we enable interoperability and scalability? You have different kinds of data sets with multimodal. How do you bring all this together into a single pane of glass, and then do different kinds of AI on top of it? It could be tracking disease progression, or it could be models to detect disease early, or develop medicines faster. And these are some of the services which are available from AWS. If you look at omics data, there is a service called Health Omics. For imaging, there is something called Health Imaging. Similarly, data lake, it could be a plain data lake, or it could be a health lake. Like I mentioned, it is FHIR compliant and also ABDM compliant. And on top of this is what you run different kinds of transformations in terms of getting the data sets that you want to use to run AI, right? And when I say AI, there could be different ways of running it on cloud or on AWS. One is you have the data, you want to build your own models, AI models. So it could be a image recognition model, right? Or it could be a language model. When I say language model, it could be a multilingual model that you want to run, right? Or it could also be that you want to build your own models, but you want to take an open source model and then you want to fine tune it, right? So if you want at the infrastructure level, then you can run that on AWS. If you want to run it on a managed environment, you can use services like SageMaker to fine tune the models. And organizations also use it to build small language models or large language models, which is again used to analyze the data that you're gathering. Third is, I'm sure all of you heard about generative AI, right? Yes? Okay. So generative AI, again, like I said, one way is you want to build your own large language models or small language models suiting to a specific requirement. And at the same time, there are quite a few large language models which are already available which are developed by organizations like, it could be Anthropic, it could be Meta, it could be OpenAI. So there are a lot of large language model providers who are there, and you can use these large language models also and run analysis or derive insights on the data that you already have through API calls itself, right? So that means you are not really getting into developing new models, but you want to leverage those large language models to analyze the data that you already have, right? So that is also another option that you can use using Amazon Bedrock on AWS. And next point is, if you want to build AI agents, I'll talk about some of the use cases around AI agents as well. So you can build your own AI agent. So like, for example, there could be one agent which is actually getting patient data. There is another agent which is actually doing some image analysis of, say, X-rays, right? I mean, you could use those agents with a supervisor agent and getting multiple data sets and then giving out an output in terms of a summary of a patient's, longitudinal journey, right? So these are the kind of things that you can actually do. So these could be some of the generative AI use cases which are more healthcare oriented. So one could be a clinical notes from ambient listening. It could be a patient and a doctor conversation, which is in an audio mode and listened and transcribed into a conversation, and then you get it as a final result that a doctor could just print and give it to the patient, right? Instead of doctor writing it or someone else writing on behalf of the doctor. So it helps remove the administrative burden from doctors. At the same time, you capture the data which is needed for further analysis that you want to do. Another example could be around, I'm picking a few, I'm not talking about all of this, I'll just pick a few. Like, for example, if you want to do analyze patient level and cohort level records to identify risks. So that means there is huge amount of data that you have, right? So in that, how do you create cohorts? So when you say cohorts, it could be an age-based cohort, it could be a gender-based cohort, it could be a location-based cohort. How do you create those cohorts on top of the data and then run the analysis? And here the data volumes are huge. Like I said, it could be terabytes, it could be petabytes, right? I mean, you need that scalable model to run these analysis models on top of this data. Another could be, a self-service care triage, right? I mean, a lot of us, I'll just give an example. I mean, we go to a hospital, doctor gives us a prescription, doctor writes the medicines to use. and 3 days later you realize that you have misplaced the prescription somewhere. What do you do? Right? I mean, is there an easy way for me as a patient to just probably get into a conversational AI and say that, tell me what were the medicines which were prescribed to me? Or can you just give me a soft copy of the prescription which was given? Right? So it could be a simple conversational AI which is actually using agents to talk to a hospital's HMIs or PACs and giving me the output. Similarly, if you want to take an appointment of a doctor, how easy is it for you to take an appointment? You call up the hospital and you want to take a appointment for internal medicine, right? And you ask the person on the other side, can you tell me which all doctors are available for internal medicine? The person on the other side will probably name 2 doctors and say that, even though there are 10 doctors available in that hospital, right? But if you want that flexibility, then probably a conversational AI or a self-service solution could actually help, which will tell that, these are the doctors who are available. This is their specialization. These are the times that they are available. And then you just do it instead of, trying to talk to a person who's probably not available late in the night and all, right? So these are some of the solutions which could actually help in patient experience as well using AI and agentic AI. Similarly, the last point in terms of data ingestion or data identification, if there is a lot of data related to patients, but if I want to get all the data related to me at different hospitals, how do I get that? Is there a way of getting that? No. Right? Because at some hospital, I would have given my wife's number. At another hospital, I would have given my number, right? So there is something called, record matching that you can also do with some of the ready services that you can use to say that, what is probability of Synapse data in this particular system versus Synapse data in this particular system, right? So a patient record matching kind of ready services also, which you can use instead of building your own AI models. Okay, and these are some examples of how you can architect solutions on AWS. This is a simple example of, say, probably creating a discharge summary which could reduce from a few hours to a few minutes, and it creates a draft of the discharge summary, and then the clinician can review it and give it to the patient at the time of discharge. But important point is serverless architecture or event-driven architecture, which can actually scale from, say, a few hundred records to a few thousand records, and at the same time keeping cost under consideration, right? So serverless models are actually they scale as you use, and you pay only for what you're using, right? So that way you're not spending a lot of money even if your usage is very little. Similarly, another use case could be, the self-service care triage that I mentioned, that, there could be multiple agents which are actually talking to individual systems and then getting the data that, the patient actually wants to understand through a conversational AI. So if you look at this, it uses a RAG, it uses, different services. It could be a Postgre database. It could be a pharmacy purchases in the hospital that the patient is doing. So each of these agents can actually talk to those particular systems and give the information that a patient would want to have. Okay. So this is more for agentic use cases for life sciences. It could be a research one where there could be a supervisor agent, and then there are sub agents to get different data sets. Like, for example, the biomarker database could be a normal relational database in which you have the data which is needed for biomarker discovery. And there could be another one which is more around getting data from imaging. So this is an agent which could be named as a medical imaging expert, which is getting data related to imaging and then analyzing it. And then the supervisor agent actually orchestrates the data integration between these individual agents and gives the final output. Similarly, it could be around clinical development where you'll have to look at multiple aspects around, what are the regulatory rules, what are the recruitment rules, what are the past clinical trials which are done, and then, give a protocol draft to you, which you can use to further fine tune and run some, a plan for your clinical trials. Okay. And over time, with the way industry is going, there would be a proliferation of agents. There could be agents, sub-agents for multiple of this. There could be multiple agents for, say, drug design, biomarker identification I've already talked about, clinical trials I've already talked about. There could be around market research, where it's actually helpful for researchers who are actually getting into a specific domain and doing research and trying to understand what kind of patents are already filed, what kind of research is already happening. And at the same time, they can integrate with the knowledge base which is there within the organization, which is not available publicly. Okay. Evaluations and observability. When you run AI, one important aspect is evaluations. Are you getting the output that you are expecting or not? So what kind of evaluation that you do, what kind of observability that you have. So different kind of mechanisms. It could be text to SQL, like, if you use natural language processing, is it doing the right text to SQL kind of a conversion? Yeah. So this could be a steps on which you can move, build a data strategy, and then you could do population health reporting, machine learning and Gen AI, and some of the use cases that earlier speakers also talked about. It could be around, clinical decision support system, or it could be multimodal, including omics and IoT.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.